It was a cold winter morning in the city. People hurried through the streets, clutching their coats tightly, their eyes glued to the ground, trying to escape the bite of the wind. Among the sea of strangers, a young woman named Emily walked briskly toward her office. She was running late, her mind heavy with deadlines, bills, and the never-ending noise of life. That day, she wasn't thinking about anyone else, only herself. Until, at the corner of 5th and Main, she noticed an old man sitting on the curb. His clothes were worn and torn, his shoes barely holding together, and his head was bowed low as though the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Emily almost walked past him. People did it every day. But as she took another step, something in her heart tugged. She slowed down, hesitated, and finally stopped. The old man must have sensed someone nearby because he slowly looked up. His eyes were tired and lifeless, but in them, Emily saw more than poverty. She saw loneliness. The kind of loneliness that goes beyond being alone, the kind that comes from being unseen, unheard, and forgotten by the world. She didn't have money to give, nor food in her bag. But what she had was free. She smiled. It wasn't a quick, polite smile, the kind you give out of obligation. It was warm, genuine, and filled with a silent message, "I see you." The old man's lips trembled, as though he had forgotten how to respond. Then, slowly, a faint smile grew on his face, and for a brief moment, the years seemed to lift from his tired eyes. Emily continued on her way, not realizing that this tiny act had planted a seed that would grow in ways she couldn't imagine. Later that evening, the old man, whose name was George, sat in a shelter for the first time in weeks. A volunteer had approached him earlier, offering a hot meal and a place to sleep. George didn't know why, but for the first time in a long time, he said yes. Maybe it was because Emily's smile had reminded him that not everyone had forgotten him. That single night at the shelter turned into a week. He started eating regularly, talking to people again, and even helping the younger men there with odd jobs. Every time he felt like slipping back into hopelessness, he thought about that young woman's smile and the warmth it carried. Meanwhile, Emily had forgotten all about the moment. She went about her busy life, unaware that her small gesture had sparked a chain of events. 3 months later, Emily found herself in a coffee shop, sitting alone by the window. She was having a rough day, her boss had been harsh, her rent had gone up, and her car had broken down that morning. She was staring at her untouched coffee when she noticed the barista hand her a cup with a note written on it. It read, "Paid for by the gentleman at the corner table. He says thank you for the smile." Emily turned and saw a man, neatly dressed in a clean shirt and jacket, smiling warmly at her. It took her a moment, but then she realized it was George. She almost didn't recognize him. His beard was trimmed, his eyes brighter, and he carried himself with dignity. He walked over, holding his own coffee. "I don't know if you remember me," he began, "but a while back, you passed me on the street when I was not in a good place. You smiled at me. That day, I was ready to give up on everything. But that smile, it reminded me I was still human. It made me accept help from a volunteer later that day. And because of that, I found my way back. I have a job now. A room. And hope." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. She had never imagined that something so small could make such a difference. George smiled again. "I've learned something," he said. "When someone feels invisible, a little kindness can bring them back into the light. You gave me that, without even knowing." They talked for hours that afternoon. Emily learned about the struggles George had faced, the loss of his wife, the spiral into depression, the bad luck that left him homeless. She also learned about the kindness of strangers at the shelter, the part-time job that grew into steady work, and his dream of helping others who were where he once was. When they parted, George pressed something into her hand. It was a small card with a single word written on it, "Smile." Months passed, and Emily kept that card in her wallet. On days when life felt heavy, she'd look at it and remember George's transformation. She also began to notice the people around her more, the cashier who looked exhausted, the bus driver who seemed lonely, the coworker who ate lunch alone. And she began to give away her smiles freely, never knowing whose life they might touch. One rainy evening, she saw a teenage boy sitting outside a store, shivering. He didn't ask for anything, just kept his head down. Emily walked over, handed him her umbrella, and smiled. The boy looked up at her, startled, then slowly smiled back. And just like that, the chain continued. Because that's the thing about kindness, it never ends with the person who receives it. It moves forward, from one heart to another, building bridges where there were once walls. In the end, Emily realized something. We often think we need big actions, money, or resources to change lives. But sometimes, all it takes is the courage to look up from our own troubles and truly see another person. To acknowledge their humanity. To share a smile. That day on the corner of 5th and Main, Emily didn't just change George's life, she unknowingly changed her own. And in some way, she may have changed the lives of countless others, all because of one simple, genuine moment of connection.